There are those who walk this earth believing their cruelty comes without consequence. They move through life breaking spirits, wounding hearts, and silencing voices, convinced that their actions are but fleeting whispers in the wind, that pain inflicted is pain forgotten. The illusion of power is a dangerous thing. It convinces those who wield it that their actions exist in isolation, that cruelty can be handed out without consequence, and that harm inflicted on others vanishes into the void, leaving no trace. It is a lie they tell themselves, a comfortable deception that allows them to act without guilt, without remorse. But power is never without cost. The belief that one can manipulate, degrade, or hurt another without price is one of the greatest mistakes a person can make. There are individuals who believe that control is their right, that the suffering they impose on others is merely a byproduct of their authority. They see themselves as untouchable, standing above the consequences of their own behavior. To them, their words are just words, their actions just fleeting moments, and their abuse nothing more than a whisper in time. They convince themselves that what is done in anger, in dominance, in selfishness, will simply fade away. Yet history tells a different story. Psychology tells a different story. Humanity itself is built upon the truth that every action, no matter how small, sends ripples outward, affecting not only the person on the receiving end, but the world around them. The abuser may walk away from the scene of their cruelty, but the weight of their choices remains. What they believe to be a show of power is in reality a display of weakness, an exposure of their own lack of control, their own unresolved chaos. True power does not lie in destruction. It does not lie in intimidation, in manipulation, or in the ability to bend another's will through force or fear. These things are illusions, fleeting moments of dominance that crumble under the weight of time. The child humiliated by a parent, the employee broken down by a superior, the friend betrayed by deception. These are not insignificant events that disappear once the moment has passed. They are seeds planted in the mind, in the heart, in the spirit. They shape the way people see themselves, the way they move through the world, and in doing so, they shape the world itself. An abuser may walk away from their cruelty as if nothing happened, but the echoes of their actions remain. They ripple outward, altering relationships, shifting perspectives, changing the course of lives in ways they will never fully comprehend. The damage done in moments of selfishness, in moments of unchecked anger, does not end when they turn their back. It festers, it grows, and one day it returns. Some call it karma, others call it justice, but at its core, it is simply the reality of existence. You cannot pour poison into the world and expect to drink only from clear waters. You cannot tear people down and expect to build a life untouched by the rubble. The damage inflicted on others is never confined to them alone. It spreads, through their pain, through their choices, through the quiet ways they carry that weight forward. But perhaps the greatest flaw in the illusion of power is the belief that the abused will remain as they are, that they will stay small, stay broken, stay silenced. This is the ultimate mistake, because while some may be crushed beneath the weight of what has been done to them, others will rise. Others will take that pain and turn it into resilience. Others will find strength in the very thing meant to destroy them. And here is where the abuser's greatest cost is revealed, not in the suffering they have caused, but in the power they have unknowingly given to those they sought to break. For every person who has endured, for every soul who has been wounded and yet refuses to be defined by that wound, there is a reckoning. The victim does not remain a victim, they become something more. What then is the cost of abuse? It is the weight of lives changed, the unseen scars carried by those who refuse to be destroyed. It is the reality that no act of cruelty is ever truly forgotten. It is the knowledge that while the abuser believes themselves free, they have, in truth, woven themselves into the very fabric of the lives they sought to diminish. They have written their names into the pain of others, and that is a debt that time will not let go, unpaid. There is no power in destruction. There is no real strength in breaking another. The only power that lasts, The only strength that endures is found in those who choose to heal rather than harm, to build rather than tear down. Those who abuse, who manipulate, who believe themselves above consequence, they will learn sooner or later that their actions have weight, that the cost is real, and that no illusion of power can protect them from the truth. Just because wounds are invisible doesn't mean they don't exist. Pain is not always seen in bruises or heard in cries. It often lingers in silence, buried beneath forced smiles, quiet sighs, and the weight of unspoken words. Those who inflict harm may believe that once the moment has passed, so has the damage. They assume that what they have done is temporary, that their cruelty, their manipulation, their neglect, or their words, those sharp, cutting words, fade into nothingness. But pain is not so easily dismissed. It does not vanish simply because it is ignored. It does not evaporate because the abuser refuses to acknowledge it. Pain finds a home in the corners of the mind. It takes root, shaping the way a person sees the world, shaping the way they see themselves. The echoes of past wounds whisper in moments of doubt. A simple mistake that another might brush off becomes a voice inside saying, "See, you are worthless." A moment of happiness is tainted by a memory that insists, "This will not last." Trust becomes a fragile thing, as every past betrayal teaches the heart to shield itself, to expect disappointment, to question kindness. This is the weight of invisible wounds. It is not just the memory of what was done, but the way it rewires a person's entire being. It alters their confidence, their ability to love, their ability to feel safe in the world. The echoes of past harm influence the choices they make, the paths they take, and even the dreams they dare to believe in. A child belittled and ridiculed may grow into an adult who cannot see their own worth, forever chasing validation that should have been theirs without question. A person once controlled and manipulated may struggle to trust their own voice, doubting their own decisions even when no one else is there to silence them. Abusers do not see these echoes. They do not witness the long, sleepless nights where their words replay like a broken record. They do not feel the anxiety that creeps in when someone who has suffered is forced to stand in a room full of people, their mind convincing them they are being judged, ridiculed, seen as lesser. They are blind to the years spent unraveling the damage, to the therapy sessions, the self-doubt, the battles fought in the solitude of one's own thoughts. Some might say, "But the past is the past, why not let it go?" As if pain is a simple thing, a switch that can be turned off with mere willpower. But no one tells the body how to forget a wound. No one tells the mind how to erase an experience that shaped it. Healing is not a decision made in an instant. It is a process, one that takes time, effort, and often an unimaginable amount of strength. Yet there is something remarkable about the human spirit. Even in the depths of suffering, even when the echoes of past harm seem inescapable, there is resilience. There is the ability to take what was meant to destroy and turn it into something else. Wisdom, awareness, strength. The journey is not easy and the scars remain, but scars do not mean weakness. They mean survival. They mean a story, a path taken despite the weight carried. The echoes of pain do not have to define a person. They may linger, they may whisper, but they do not have to control. To those who have suffered at the hands of another, know this: your pain is real, your experience is valid, and your healing is possible. You are not weak for what was done to you, and you are not broken beyond repair. The weight you carry may feel unbearable at times, but it is not yours to hold forever. To those who have caused harm, whether intentionally or not, understand this: what you do to another does not simply disappear. It lives on in the quiet moments, in the hidden struggles, in the wounds you cannot see. Your actions, your words, your choices, they matter. They shape others in ways you may never fully comprehend. And for those standing at the crossroads of pain and healing, remember, you are more than what was done to you. The echoes may remain, but they do not have to define your future. In time, with courage, they will become something else entirely. Not chains, but lessons. Not barriers, but stepping stones. Not an ending, but the beginning of a new story. One where you take back what was taken and rebuild yourself, stronger than before. They walk away believing they have won. They think their actions, their words, their cruelty have no lasting consequence. They strike, they belittle, they manipulate, and then they move on, convinced that their hands remain clean, that the wounds they've inflicted are someone else's burden to carry. But nothing in this life is without cost. Nothing. There is a misconception among those who harm others, a lie they tell themselves, that pain inflicted is simply left behind, that once they exit the scene of their wrongdoing it ceases to exist, that once the words have been said they fade into the air, leaving no trace, that once the damage is done it is the victim's problem, not theirs. But they fail to understand the nature of pain, the way it lingers, the way it embeds itself deep in the fabric of a person's being. To the one who suffers, the pain is not an isolated event, it is a weight carried forward, shaping the way they see themselves, the way they see the world. The wounds left behind do not simply vanish, they manifest in hesitation, in self-doubt, in the quiet fear that whispers, maybe they were right. The abuser, in their arrogance, does not realize that their cruelty sets off a chain reaction, one they may never see, but one that is very, very real. But here is where they are mistaken, where their ignorance blinds them. They believe they are immune to the consequences of what they have done. They believe they can walk away unscathed, untouched. They believe that life will not hold them accountable. But life has a way of collecting its debts. There is a price for breaking another human being, even if it is not paid immediately. There is a weight to cruelty, and whether they recognize it or not, they carry it with them. It seeps into their interactions, into their relationships, into their ability to find peace within themselves. Some may be oblivious to it at first, mistaking their ability to move forward as evidence that they have escaped consequence. But the debt does not disappear, it merely waits. It waits in the form of sleepless nights. It waits in the quiet moments when the mind, left unchecked, begins to replay the past. It waits in the way their name becomes a whisper spoken with resentment, in the way people begin to withdraw from them, in the way trust erodes around them. It waits in the realization, too late, that respect is something earned, not taken, that power gained through cruelty is not power at all, only borrowed time. And when that time runs out, when they are left with nothing but their own reflection, they will come to understand. The cost was never avoided, it was merely delayed. But life is not just about retribution. It is about transformation. For those who have suffered, for those who have carried the weight of someone else's cruelty, know this. The debt is not yours to pay. What was done to you was not a reflection of your worth, but of theirs. And while they may have thought they walked away unharmed, they did not. The cost finds its way home. Because every action has a return. Every wound inflicted leaves a mark, not just on the one who suffers, but on the one who inflicted it. And when the time comes, when life demands payment, they will come to understand the truth they once ignored. Nothing was ever free. There is something remarkable about the human spirit. It bends, it bruises, but it does not break easily. Those who have endured abuse, who have suffered under the weight of cruelty, often do not realize the strength they carry. At first, pain feels like a poison, something that eats away at the mind, making one question their worth, their choices, even their existence. But pain is not the end. It is a beginning, a transformation, a fire that refines those who dare to step through it. Many people go through life untouched by real suffering, floating above the depths of struggle. They may mistake their comfort for strength, but true strength is not found in ease. It is forged in hardship, in the moments where everything is stripped away and only the core of who you are remains. It is in the silent battles fought in the mind, the nights spent wondering if things will ever get better, and the mornings where, despite everything, you rise again. There are those who think they can break another person with words, with violence, with the steady erosion of dignity. They believe that their cruelty has no lasting impact beyond the moment. But what they fail to understand is that the human soul, when pushed, does not simply crumble, it adapts, it learns, it grows. When someone has walked through pain, through betrayal, through the deepest loneliness, they come out different. They come out knowing things others do not. The person who has suffered understands what it means to lose everything, to feel invisible, to question their own worth. But in that very questioning, a power is born. A strength that does not rely on external validation, on approval, on the fragile acceptance of others. They know what it means to be alone and yet still stand. They know what it means to be underestimated and yet still rise. And that knowledge is unshakable. At first, pain feels like a burden. It feels unfair, cruel, and meaningless. But given time, given reflection, it becomes something else. It becomes a source of wisdom, of depth, of a kind of vision that those who have never suffered will never understand. People who have faced cruelty have seen the worst of human nature, and, because of that, they recognize kindness more deeply, they appreciate love more profoundly, and they find meaning where others see nothing. Pain teaches in ways comfort never can. It forces one to confront themselves, to find reservoirs of strength they never knew existed. It shows them who they truly are when all the illusions are stripped away. There is something in surviving suffering that creates a quiet, steady power. One that does not need to be announced, does not need to be proven. It simply is. And that power, once realized, becomes untouchable. Those who inflict harm often believe they have taken something from their victims. And in the beginning, it may seem that way. They may take innocence, they may take security, they may even take years of someone's life. But what they do not realize is that in attempting to break another, they often create something far greater than they could have ever imagined. They create a person who has looked into the abyss and did not fall. A person who understands suffering and therefore understands resilience. They create someone who has walked through the fire and emerged stronger, wiser, and utterly unshaken by the small, petty cruelties of the world. There is no shame in having suffered. The shame belongs to those who inflicted the suffering, those who believed their abuse carried no cost. The one who has endured, however, walks away with something invaluable, the unbreakable knowledge that they survived, that they endured what was meant to destroy them and are still here, still breathing, still moving forward. And that is something no abuser can ever take away. It is not easy to see pain as a gift. It takes time, it takes healing. It takes the realization that scars are not signs of weakness, but of survival. That the wounds once inflicted are no longer open, no longer bleeding, but have closed, leaving behind proof that they were endured. There will always be those who try to harm others, who think their cruelty is power. But the greatest power does not belong to the one who inflicted the pain. It belongs to the one who survived it. And the one who has endured, who has learned, who has risen despite it all, that person is stronger than those who have never suffered could ever hope to be. No cruelty goes unnoticed. That is a truth as old as time itself. Those who act with malice, those who harm others with words or actions, often believe their deeds vanish into nothingness. They convince themselves that once the moment has passed, once the bruises fade, once the words are forgotten, they are free. They believe their cruelty is a whisper carried away by the wind, leaving no trace, no consequence, no cost. But time remembers. Time is patient. Time does not seek revenge, nor does it strike in anger, but it is relentless in its balance. The past is never truly buried. It lingers beneath the surface, waiting, shaping the future in ways unseen. The abuser may carry on, believing themselves untouched, but they have already set something into motion. They have woven themselves into the very fabric of another person's life, not as a fleeting presence, but as a force that altered their course. The weight of cruelty is not just carried by the victim, it is carried by time itself, and time does not forget. A harsh word spoken in anger may seem meaningless to the one who utters it, but it might replay in another's mind for a lifetime. A betrayal, a humiliation, an act of violence. These do not vanish simply because the abuser moves on. They are not erased by denial, nor are they undone by distance. The pain they cause ripples outward, affecting decisions, shaping futures, and leaving scars in places unseen. And yet time is not just a keeper of pain, it is also a collector of justice. It does not operate on human schedules, nor does it act on demand, but it moves with certainty. It waits for the moment when the abuser, so certain of their escape, is faced with the consequences of what they have done. Sometimes this reckoning is loud and unmistakable. A fall from grace, a loss of power, a moment when the world turns its eyes upon them and demands accountability. But more often, time is subtle. It works quietly, weaving its justice into the very fabric of life itself. The abuser who once dismissed the suffering they caused finds themselves inexplicably lost, surrounded by distrust, unable to build something meaningful because they have spent too long destroying. They may feel an emptiness they cannot name, a restlessness they cannot soothe. The relationships they once took for granted erode. The admiration they once enjoyed fades, and they are left to wonder why. Time does not need to punish, it simply balances. There are those who believe they have outlived the past, that enough years have passed to erase what was done. But what is time to memory? What is time to the heart? The past does not stay buried because it does not exist outside of us. It exists within. The one who has suffered does not forget, even if they forgive. The world does not forget, even if it moves on. And most of all, the abuser themselves do not forget, no matter how deeply they try to bury it. For some, this reckoning comes in the form of regret, a slow realization that the harm they inflicted cannot be undone. For others, it comes in the form of isolation, as they find themselves surrounded not by love, but by the emptiness they created. And for the rest, it comes as a lesson, one they can no longer ignore, one that forces them to face themselves in the mirror and truly see who they have been. Because that is the final truth of time, it forces all to see. No cruelty goes unnoticed, no pain exists in isolation. Every action, every word, every wound inflicted becomes part of the great story that time carries forward. And in the end, time always returns to collect what is owed. Every person leaves something behind in this world. Some leave kindness, wisdom, and inspiration, while others leave pain, regret, and destruction. The choices we make, whether in the heat of anger, the coldness of indifference, or the warmth of compassion, are our legacy. Many people believe their actions exist only in the moment, that words spoken in cruelty will fade, that wounds inflicted will heal without a trace, but life is not so forgetful. When we harm another, we create something far beyond the immediate moment. An insult, a betrayal, an act of violence. It does not simply disappear once the moment has passed. It lingers, it echoes, it changes the course of another person's journey, sometimes in ways we cannot comprehend. A single word of ridicule can shatter confidence that takes years to rebuild. A single act of neglect can plant a seed of self-doubt that grows into a lifetime of insecurity. And an act of abuse, whether physical or emotional, can create wounds that never fully close. The tragedy of the abuser is that they rarely see the long road their choices have paved. They believe they can walk away, that time erases all wrongs, that consequences are only for those who acknowledge them, but the truth is far less forgiving. No cruelty is ever truly forgotten. It is absorbed into the fabric of someone's existence, shaping their thoughts, their fears, their choices. Sometimes it poisons them, sometimes it fuels them. Either way, the mark remains. But there is another side to this truth, one that offers hope. Just as cruelty leaves scars, so too does kindness leave imprints. A moment of understanding, a word of encouragement, an act of love, these too can shape a life in ways unseen. Just as a single cruel remark can plant doubt, a single affirmation can plant confidence. Just as neglect can breed emptiness, care can create fulfillment. The difference between the two legacies is not in their power, but in their purpose. Every person must decide what kind of impact they will leave behind. Some will choose to continue cycles of pain, believing that because they have suffered, others must suffer as well. They will become the very thing that once wounded them, unaware that in doing so, they are not escaping their own pain but rather feeding it, allowing it to consume them and everything around them. Others will choose a different path. They will take the pain they have endured and turn it into something meaningful. They will break the cycle, refusing to let their suffering become someone else's burden. They will decide, consciously and deliberately, to leave behind something greater than what they were given. It is easy to believe that we are powerless in shaping the world, that our actions are too small to matter in the grand scheme of things. But history is not written by grand gestures alone. It is written in the quiet moments of choice. It is written in the decision to be kind when cruelty would be easier, to forgive when resentment feels justified, to help when turning away would cost nothing. It is written in the way we choose to treat those who can do nothing for us. A life lived without consideration for the impact it leaves is a life wasted. The abuser, in their blindness, believes they are invincible, that their harm will dissolve into nothingness. But time has a way of keeping records. Wounds inflicted on others often find their way back to the one who caused them.